What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Stacking the Box College Football Edition. I'm your host, Reed Wallach, joined as always by the great Cody Williams. Cody, week 4, we got some more conference play ahead of us. We got some injury news we want to talk about. We have some conference debuts for some certain teams that we're going to talk about in our pick segment. And we're also going to have to recap the lead that you continue to amount on me as I've really now the spotting you elite has turned into I'm really digging myself a hole here early in the season. So, minor setback for a major comeback. But Cody, how's it going, man? How was your week 3?
Dude, it was.
As we lose Cody pretty quickly into the show, I guess he's trying to run away with the lead. We got some picks to give out, man. You can't leave the show too early. But Cody is back. So, Cody, how was your week 3? Let's try this again.
Yeah, dude, it was good. Sorry for the New Mexico internet. It is wreaking havoc on whatever is going on today. But, man, it was good. I was highly entertained throughout the day, despite we didn't really get any big upsets. We didn't really get any marquee games. Like, any marquee games that were on the schedule turned out to not be possibly what we were looking for from those. But still a good week. Not a good week for either of our picks. I wish I could have built my lead a little bit more on you, frankly.
Yeah, just looking back at some of the picks, I don't know. I didn't feel so confident in the games really that I felt myself. I kind of went more for a total aspect. I didn't have like such strong conviction. I feel like maybe that's where I ran into some trouble. And also like underdog Sickos just complete botched on my end. So we move on. But I would say the biggest takeaway from week 3 and what was a fairly subdued slate. We spoke about how we didn't really like this slate in terms of the big impact it's going to have on the national championship race. I mean, if Georgia would have lost, I would have had something. But the biggest thing happened on the field was that Quinn Ewers went down with an injury against UTSA in the romp of the Roadrunners. So Texas, they go to, if you're not familiar, Peyton Manning and Eli Manning's nephew, Arch Manning, is the backup quarterback at Texas. He comes in and lights it up as he's a 5-star prospect. He was playing a G5 team. That's a pretty bad G5 team at that this season. Absolutely cooked. Passed for over 200 yards, ran for a 60-plus yard touchdown. And I think this is an interesting scenario because Quinn Ewers has a bit of an injury history, and Steve Sarkisian said in his Monday availability, Quinn Ewers is day-to-day with this injury, is questionable for the UL Monroe game this weekend. I believe that he will be out for this game. He was deemed week to week before, so I think that this is more, let's keep him on ice for a little bit and let Arch Manning cook. That did not stop social media and the betting markets from reacting, making Arch Manning now a relative contender for the Heisman Trophy. He's 25-1. He has the same odds as Quinn Ewers now. Cody, what are some of your thoughts on the Texas quarterback room, on Arch Manning, and where you see this going for the Longhorns?
So first off, we've got a Manning who can run. So look out, world! Like we've never seen that before. So that could be a game changer. I have 2 big thoughts. One, I would honestly be surprised if we see Quinn Ewers before Red River, which is in 3 weeks. They have UL Monroe. They have a Mississippi State team who looks frankly quite bad, and then they have their bye week before they go into Red River, and then they play Georgia the week after that. So why not protect Quinn Ewers? You should win those games easily because Arch Manning did look impressive, man. He had one, like I believe it was his 3rd drive of the game. He, had some shortcomings and looked like a player taking his first meaningful snaps in college football. But after that, he tightened up. He looked mature. He looked composed. He looked poised. And obviously, he is a 5-star prospect. He is a Manning. He has all of this talent going with him. So Texas is in really good hands no matter what happens at the quarterback position. But I would suspect that with the way this injury has already progressed from week to week to day, that Quinn Ewers could play.
I believe what Cody was trying to say was that Quinn Ewers could play this weekend and what they're going to do. And Cody's back, so he'll continue. I'm trying to finish your sentences as you pop out, but continue.
No, I appreciate you, trying to carry on my train of thought. But no, I was exactly what you were saying that I was saying is what I was saying. So, Quinn Ewers probably could play in some of these games, but I don't see a need to, so I don't think it's going to be forced. I think when you look at the Heisman market, the Arch Manning thing is a complete overreaction. That's just absurd. But I do think that Quinn Ewers' value has gone down quite a lot because if they do hold him out, like I foresee them doing before Red River, he's going to have some Heisman moments in those games. I would surely imagine, especially if Texas wins either or both of those games. But I do think that at the end of the day, like it's hard to fully justify getting a Heisman winner or even sending him to New York if he doesn't have like the total counting stats.
Yeah. From a Heisman perspective, I was never really on the Quinn Ewers side, backing him or anything. And I said, I believe after the Michigan win that I still wasn't really banking on Ewers as a Heisman favorite or anything like that. And this just only further reinforces that. If he's going to miss a game, if he's going to miss 3 games, that's kind of a death knell for all Heisman contenders in the past. So it's just tough for me to see Quinn Ewers really competing for the Heisman Trophy. And Arch Manning, that's just, I mean, he's priced like he has a chance, but in reality, he has no chance. Like he's 25-1 right now. If he keeps going down, he's just going to take away win equity from guys that actually have a chance of winning. Arch Manning, he has now missed 2.5 games and not going to finish the season. I mean, I guess in the scenario that Arch Manning really upgrades this roster to such a degree that he stays on, I still don't envision that he will have, like for him to win, he would have to go absolutely thermonuclear to win. And you look at the schedule. First of all, this is the first year Texas in the SEC. You mentioned Red River against Oklahoma. You mentioned Georgia, Kentucky, Texas A&M. Those are 2 pretty elite defenses at that. Like Arch Manning isn't accumulating the stats to win this award. Next year, he's probably going to be the betting favorite going into the season, given his name, brand, and the fact that he plays for Texas. But right now, like, do not bet on Arch Manning. Just don't do it. If he has a chance, you won't have time to bet on him. Don't bet on him.
Yeah, don't waste your money like that. I do have I guess I kind of want to hear your thoughts a little bit, Reed, about what you thought from what we saw from Arch. Like, was it as impressive to you as it was to me?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I wasn't super locked in on it because there were just a million other games going on, and I knew I could watch the highlights. So I didn't see like full game flow, what he really looked like. I kind of saw more of and there weren't many low lights, but I saw most of the highlights. And look, I'm not surprised that the 5-star prospect could come and sling it around. But yeah, I think when he starts if he were to face SEC competition, I think it's going to look a lot different. So this wasn't a game where I'm like, oh, here we go, like Arch Manning time. I was more like, all right, Texas is a top 5 team in the country, and they took care. Like, to me, the drop off wasn't apparent. It's if he's forced to play in Red River or he's forced to come in against an SEC team on the road, that's where I need to see it to really have like my thoughts change. Like, yeah, by the time next year rolls around, he's the starter. Yeah, Texas is going to look amazing, and he's very good. But I don't have like a crazy takeaway from watching him.
No, I think that's fair. I think one of my other big takeaways is like if anyone wants to overreact to the Arch Manning stuff and say, like say he does have a great game, another great game against UL Monroe, and if they do play him against Mississippi State as well, there are going to be people who are going to say put Arch Manning in and
Yeah, and just to finish Cody's thought there, and I kind of agree with the similar sentiments that I believe, Cody, what you were trying to say was that people are going to try and make this a put an Arch over Quinn Ewers scenario. I don't think that will happen.
No.
But Quinn Ewers does, like I said before, he does have an injury history. Last year he missed time with an injury. He's gone down before, so I am curious. And this isn't like it's a strained abdomen is a weird injury to have in the first place. So I do wonder, like, does this linger? Does it flare up again? Because this is almost like a wide receiver with a hamstring almost, where these things are soft tissue. It's not necessarily like a broken finger or something. You know what I mean? Where it's not like, okay, there is like a diagnosis and you play through it. This is like things that flare up over time. So I do wonder if maybe this is something that lingers over the year now. I think that's another reason, though, that Quinn Ewers would sit until Red River.
No, I agree with that as well. Quarterback is a rotational spot on the field. Like, he has to rotate, and that's what you need your abdominals for. So, like, that makes sense that it could linger and why they might be cautious with it. And I think that the other part of his history that I look at, though, is traditionally we've seen Quinn Ewers play very well in big regular season games. Like, we've just seen him rise to the occasion. We look at Michigan, you look at Alabama last year. Like, he rose to the occasion in those spots. We have no idea if Arch Manning can do that. So, like, you have to ride that hand, that experience in those big moments.
No, 100%. So really quick before we move on, though, I just want to get your thoughts on the Heisman as a whole here, because Ewers was the favorite. He now is hurt and takes a big step back here in terms of odds. So just to run through a few before we do some picks and preview this week. I'm not going to rattle off all the names, but Cam Ward's the favorite at plus 450. Jalen Milroe and Jackson Dart are each 6-1. Dylan Gabriel and Nico Iamaleava are 9-1. And then there's a bit of a drop-off. Carson Beck takes a slide 14-1 after a pretty shaky showing against Kentucky. Miller Moss, big game. We're going to talk about him against Michigan, 18-1. And then you have Quinn Ewers at 20-1 with Will Howard, Ashton Genty, and then a bit of a drop-off again before you get to Avery Johnson and Arch Manning. So as we wait for Cody to get back in the stream, I could give my thoughts. To me, Cody, I agree with Cam Ward being the favorite right now. I don't know if this is necessarily who's going to be there at the end, because I do think there will be some guys cannibalizing each other, especially in the SEC ranks. But I agree right now that Cam Ward should be the favorite. Guys put up some big numbers to start the season. He has a signature win against Florida, even though that win I don't think is aging super well.
Right.
But you go through the rest of the schedule for Miami. I mean, what defense is going to make Cam Ward really struggle as I pull it up here? You go through, they play Virginia Tech at home on Friday night. Team is much worse than I think many had expected. Florida State, much worse than people had expected. They go to Louisville. We'll see how strong that defense is. Probably, honestly, their toughest game on the schedule. And then they close with a stretch of at Georgia Tech, middling ACC team, Wake Forest, bad ACC team, and at Syracuse in the season finale, which good team, talented team, but I don't know if they're really going to make Cam Ward struggle where his numbers are going to slow down. So to me, if Miami's going to be, let's call it 11-1 ACC contender, pretty much a bona fide college football playoff team, I do think that the path is right there for Cam Ward to win the Heisman. So I agree with him being the favorite right now. Does that mean he's going to win? No, I'm not even saying bet him necessarily right now, but I agree the cleanest path right now is for Cam Ward.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that as well. Cam Ward has the easiest path to just keep putting up numbers, keep pouring in the stats, and keep making things happen. I think that the only other player that I have any strong inclination toward after 3 weeks is Jackson Dart. Just because I know he has the SEC schedule, and I know we've seen Ole Miss regress a little bit when it comes to the SEC schedule, but I do think this is a much improved Ole Miss team. I think Ole Miss has one of the more manageable schedules in the SEC. And I think that if Ole Miss is going to the playoff, it's going to be on the back of Jackson Dart by Lane Kiffin's design, to be very clear. And he's going to have the counting numbers there. So I'm personally not betting any Heisman number right now, just because I think we still have a lot to learn about a lot of this. But if you are going to, Cam Ward or Jackson Dart would be my recommendations, just because I think looking at the path ahead, I think they have the two surest routes to make it happen.
One player I want to mention before we move on, because he was the favorite and he slipped back. So Dylan Gabriel drifted out to 12-1 this week. If you look at his numbers relative to his competitors at the top, he's 9-1 right now. Again, this guy went off as the favorite. I know Oregon hasn't looked as good as people had hoped, but Dylan Gabriel is accumulating the stats at a rapid rate still that I think will put him firmly in the mix. Now, look, Oregon is going to have to show up and take care of business. I'm really talking about that October 12th matchup against Ohio State. But Dylan Gabriel right now is completing 84% of his passes while averaging over 300 passing yards per game. He hasn't thrown a pick. He's totaled 8 touchdowns. So I think that if Oregon is able to round into form and contend for the national championship, I think people are going to forget the shaky game against Idaho or the close call against Boise State and remember the Heisman moments. Again, I'm kind of drawing this scenario out, but if Oregon were to beat Ohio State and have an undefeated regular season, the counting stats are there, the team is there, the strength of schedule will be there. For I still think Dylan Gabriel is firmly in this mix, and I think he's being a bit discounted given the slow start for Oregon that I don't think is super relevant if you do think that the team can round into form ahead of the season.
No, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I'm not confident in Oregon doing that, but we'll see. I'm going to restart my computer real quick because this is driving me all crazy.
Okay, great. And in the meantime, I will talk about our sponsor. I'll talk about Underdog Fantasy. It's a great time of year. Football's back, and it's here to stay until February, so you got to get started with Underdog. There's over 1 million fans across 33 states that are making their picks on Underdog, and I love Underdog. I really like Underdog's the way you can navigate the over or the higher or lower features on Underdog Fantasy. It's a super sleek app. It's super right there in front of you. I enjoy it. I think it's a great app, and you could do your pick'em pools. You could do really anything on Underdog. So make sure you're signing up today and use the promo code Stack in the Box, the name of this fine program. If you do that, they will give you a free pick. Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. Again, use the promo code Stacking the Box to get started with Underdog. Again, that is a free first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash once you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy. If you use the promo code, again, Stack in the Box, to claim your new customer special of a free pick in your deposit offer, you must be 18 plus, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 plus in all of in Alabama and Nebraska, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms applied. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona 1-800-NEXT-STEP, or text next step to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY, or text HOPE-NY 467-369. So there you go. As we wait for Cody to restart his computer, I will preview our first game in the week for Pick'em. Again, I am struggling here. 5-12. I got to get it together. Cody's 9-8, so he's hanging around here. I gotta really pick it up. I remember earlier last season I was behind to Cody, and I ended up winning it, which I'm sure to remind him as he gets back from restarting his computer, leaving me out here to dry. But let's start with one of these new debuts for some of these teams. I kind of alluded to it at the beginning of the season, at the beginning of the episode. Tennessee, Oklahoma, USC, Michigan, Oklahoma State, Utah, all some of the prime realignment figures over this past year, 2 years in college football, are now making their debuts in their new conferences. And the first game we're going to talk about is Tennessee, Oklahoma. Tennessee taking the trip to Oklahoma. We didn't talk about Tennessee yet this episode with Nico Iamaleava. I mentioned he's 9-1 to win the Heisman. We didn't really dive into him. This is a guy, I have a bet on him to win the Heisman. The counting stats aren't really there, but this Tennessee team looks like it's going to be in the mix for a college football playoff berth and maybe even an SEC title this season. But I think Nico needs to be taken seriously as a Heisman Trophy contender. He plays his first true road game here against an Oklahoma team that has looked pretty worse for wear on the offensive side of the ball. Team is outside the top 100 in yards per play so far this season, but the defense does look pretty sturdy. This is a Brent Venables-led defense, always respectable in my opinion, really strong with Danny Stutzman at linebacker. I think that this Oklahoma team can keep a lid on Nico in his first true road start to an extent. Where I see the issue, though, as Cody rejoins us here, the issue for Tennessee or for Oklahoma, in my opinion, is what is his offensive line going to do against this Tennessee defensive front? Oklahoma is the offensive line metrics are quite poor. Again, as I mentioned, outside the top 100 in terms of yards per play so far this season, and they also check in 118th in sacks allowed. Now, look, they've played Temple, they've played Houston, and they've played Tulane. Three, let's call them between above average group of five, bad power four, and really, really bad, arguably the worst team in the college football, in the FBS this season. So I think that Oklahoma is going to struggle to move the ball and take advantage of Tennessee's defense that has some questions on the back end. I do think, though, that Tennessee isn't going to have this 50-point outburst like it did against NC State. Only gained less than 500 yards in that game in the fourth, around 430 yards total. So I think that Tennessee's scoring is a bit overrated. It's still a top 5 offense, in my opinion. But in their first true road game of the season, I'm going to go under 57.5 because I think that this game is actually won on their defense rather than their offense. So I like under 57.5 in this game. I like Tennessee to win this game outright, flirt with a cover, but I think that this game is played more in the 20s rather than some blowout. Tennessee's hanging 40 on the road. I do respect Oklahoma enough to give them that kind of credit there. Night game on the road. I could see Nico have some growing pains here as we wait for Cody to return. I'll just move on from his pick. I'll talk about Cody's pick. He laid it with Tennessee. He took the 6.5 with the Vols. If he comes back, I'll let him give a few words on that game. But this Oklahoma team, I would say relatively high on them going into the season. I mean, the win total was 7.5. They have just a ridiculously difficult schedule, but this team looks much worse than I had anticipated going into the season. 121st in EPA per pass. And I think Jackson Arnold's really talented, but he's had no time to throw. He hasn't really been able to flash that arm strength. Just the offensive line has been banged up, and it just they're running to a bit of a buzzsaw here. And I think Cody agrees with that sentiment. So Tennessee -6.5 for Cody, 57.5. I'm taking the under there on the total for myself. We move on now to USC Michigan. USC now a 5.5-point road favorite against the defending national champion Wolverines. This has been a year from hell, it looks like it's going to be for Michigan. I think they're taking a mulligan a year after winning that long-awaited national championship. They did make a quarterback change, though. Davis Warren, I guess 3 interceptions against Arkansas State was the final straw for you, Davis Warren, because you have been benched for Alex Orji, who it seems as if he had lost the job in training camp to Davis Warren. So Alex Orji, backup last year, he's in, run first quarterback, really good athlete, cannot throw a lick. He's actually this guy. If they put up props for his passing yards and passing attempts, you must take the under, whatever it takes. So to me, Michigan, they're going to try and play keep away. They're going to try and lean on their this USC defense that I think is much improved. But I still wouldn't say this is some wagon of a defense under D'Anton Lynn. I think that there's going to be a pretty clear game plan here for Michigan. We're going to run Orji. We're going to try and set up some maybe gadget plays to get Orji some space down the field to throw the ball. But this is a pretty middling Michigan pass catching group. I think this is going to be a similar script to the Texas game. So I took the under 46.5 as my favorite play. If you look at the Texas game, that total closed 41.5 Texas, Michigan. And while the final score was 31-12, that was a misleading box score. That game, Michigan had no business scoring late in that game. Texas had a few short fields that they scored on. I think USC, while their defense is going to be worse than Texas, I also think their offense is. And I think that we need to put some credence on the fact that this is Miller Moss's first true road game going into the big house. I think that USC is a great game plan, a great coach, great offensive mind, and Lincoln Riley, arguably the best. So I think that USC is going to look at what Texas did. No, we're not going to run up the middle at Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. We're actually going to do quick passes in the boundaries, try and put speed in space, stretch out this Michigan defense. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and methodically move down the field with the quick passing game, just like Texas did. So while that game landed on a total of 43, that's still under this total, guys. I like the under here. I think Michigan's going to struggle to move the ball whatsoever. I think that Miller Moss might have some growing pains, but I think USC ultimately gets this done. I just don't know if Michigan has the horses here to hang. So I think USC wins pretty workmanlike effort, in my opinion. So I'll take the under 46.5. Cody, he's kind of going with the same game plan as the Tennessee-Oklahoma. He's taken USC -5.5. I think for a lot of the reasons that Texas won this game in a blowout against Michigan just a few weeks ago, Cody took Texas in that game. I think he's thinking a similar game plan. I see a similar game plan, but I'm just going with the total because I do still respect this Michigan defense enough and the fact that it's Miller Moss's first true road start. So Michigan under for me. Cody, he's laying the points with the Trojans. That's -5.5. We move on here as we wait for Cody to return, restarting his computer. I'm just going to keep motoring through this because I love talking college football. Let's talk some Friday night. There's a handful of weekday games, 4 games before Saturday, a handful in the Power 4 ranks, and one of them is 2 resurgent teams, in my opinion, in Illinois and Nebraska. Illinois, and here's Cody. We got Illinois and Nebraska. Cody, if you want to go really brief on your bets on Tennessee and USC, I tried to fill in some color for you, but if you want to give just a few minutes on both those, feel free. I shared your picks that you were taking the road favorites, but if you want to explain why before your internet cuts out again.
Yeah, I know. We'll see if I fixed it. I'm probably not. I'm not an IT guy, but I have Tennessee -6.5 on the road. I think that
As Cody drops out again, I'm just going to go forward with Illinois, Nebraska, Friday night in Lincoln. Place probably be jumping. I mean, this is always a tough place to play in Lincoln. I think this is a little too many points, though, guys. We got a total of 43.5, and this number has actually moved out to -10 as I'm looking at it, as I didn't tell producer Joanne before the show, but Illinois now a 10-point underdog. I'm going to take the Fighting Illini here. I think that Nebraska is much improved, of course, with Dylan Raiola, but if you go through the defenses that he's played so far, he played UTEP, one of the worst teams in Conference USA, the worst conference in college football. Played Colorado, that I think we all could agree now is not nearly on the same caliber as a high-end Power 4 team. This is probably a mid to below average Power 4 team. The defense did not pressure Raiola nearly enough, and they played FCS Northern Iowa. So you're facing an Illinois team that is much improved on the offensive line, is much improved on the defense side of the ball. They beat Kansas as a home underdog. I think that we need to start upgrading this team that is much improved on both sides of the ball. Luke Altmaier, another year in the system with an improved pass-catching group. You have Zachary Franklin, the UTSA and Ole Miss transfer. Pat Bryant's coming to his own. This passing game has taken some pretty significant steps forward for the Illini. Again, this is Luke Altmaier, former Ole Miss quarterback. This team currently, Illinois, 14th in EPA per pass. I mean, they've been able to hit explosive passes. I respect this Nebraska defense quite a bit, but this is a pretty seismic shift in expectation here, where they are being favored by more than they. This was a spread of 7.5 against Colorado. Now they're laying 10 against Illinois, who I think is better than Colorado. Low total. I think that this game just needs to be taken as you take the stinky dog with a low total. So give me the Illini. I'm updating that myself because I'm working solo here. I'm taking the Illini +10. Producer Joanne, so put that one on the board. Cody, I think, though, sees this one a little bit similar to I do. He took Illinois first half team total over 7.5. I can't speak for the exact reason for why he took that exact bet, but maybe some of this is in the fact that Illinois' offense is much more frisky than I think it's getting credit for. Again, I mentioned some of those numbers where the passing game is up, but also, again, you look at what Nebraska's defense has put on so far and who they've really faced. The pass rush has not been as stout as you would think from this Nebraska defense. 33rd as of now. They haven't really faced an offensive line like Illinois that thus far has looked the part of a above average Big Ten offensive line. They haven't allowed many sacks so far this season. They've been able to protect Altmaier, and we'll see if they get the ground game going. Caden Fagan has been a fairly competent addition to this offense, and we'll see if the team can travel. I think Illinois can improve still and keep this game fairly close. Cody also thinks that the offense can be quite lively in this game. He's taking the first half over team total for the Illini, 7.5. We move on to Utah, Oklahoma State in Big 12 action. This is the Big 12 debut for both of these teams. Big Ten season debut, but Utah's first game, of course, in the Big 12. Utah, Cam Rising didn't play last week. He had a laceration on his hand suffered in week 2 against Baylor. We'll see how he looks. There were reports that he could have played last week. They held him out for this game. Oklahoma State, probably their most complete effort to date. They absolutely handled Tulsa on the road ahead of this one. And it's kind of interesting how Oklahoma State has went about their business this season. Ollie Gordon, the reigning Doak Walker Award winner, he's still there. But the ground game isn't really picking up much. They're averaging 3.37 yards per carry with Ollie Gordon there, 108th in the country. That should have been the passing game around veteran Alan Bowman, 19th in EPA per pass. The veteran offensive line that returned all 5 starters, I believe they're all like 25 or something. They haven't allowed a sack yet. Now, look, they're facing a much better team. This is the toughest team they're going to face in Utah. But are we sure? I don't know if I could trust Utah laying points on the road. I think that this game should be a pick 'em. You're now paying for Utah, who, yes, on paper has the most respect and most prestige of all the Big 12 teams this season. But we still haven't seen Cam Rising tested all that much. We now have this hand issue. We don't know how that's going to go. And this team, Utah, has been a different team on the road in the past. They're now playing their Big 12 debut against a veteran Oklahoma State team that has firepower. I just wonder how this one's going to go for them. So I took Oklahoma State +2. I wouldn't say this is my most confident play, but I just think Oklahoma State, this game should be a pick 'em. I'm going to take the points here. I think that they're live. On the other end, Cody is going with the over 52 in this one. I believe that number has steamed up. I don't know if producer Joanne could do this on the back end, but I believe that number has steamed up. But I think the market's agreeing with Cody's sentiment in this one. I mentioned the passing game of Oklahoma State really taking the top off so far. Again, 19th in EPA per pass, ranking 41st in, 69th in explosive pass rate, but averaging nearly 3 points per drive. So over 53.5 is what we'll track Cody on in this one. I believe what Cody's looking at in this one and what I see is Utah State last week against Utah, getting the ball moving downfield, averaging over 6 yards per play, an above average mark in that one. And kind of Utah, they won by 17, but don't let that fool you in how that game really was. Because that game was back and forth for a little bit, and Utah State was hanging in that one, a rivalry game. Maybe it was an overlook to this one, but I do think that Utah's offense might be slightly up against it. Utah's defense, rather. So we'll see. And if Cam Rising is healthy, it's a pretty high floor for a Utah team against an Oklahoma State defense and they allowed 600 yards to Arkansas 2 weeks ago and allowed nearly 400 against South Dakota State in week 1. So I think Cody is looking at the over 53.5 as both offenses finding success. We move on to the upset picks. Cody is going to take Arkansas on the money line against Auburn. I can't speak to the play. I have no action on it, but I believe that Cody is probably looking at the volatility of Arkansas and the fact that they could play both higher or lower to their competition. And Auburn, a team that now is starting freshman Hank Brown, who slow start, got it going against a crappy New Mexico team. I think he's expecting that Arkansas, an SEC team, to maybe challenge this Auburn offense that is maybe a little worse for wear and buy into that volatility of Arkansas to catch some variance there. So he's taking Arkansas +124, +3 on the spread. For me, I'm going to shoot a little bit higher. A team I've been fading, well, we're going to now back them as an underdog because I've mentioned that I love BYU as a dog. I don't like them as a favorite. Well, what do you know? You got BYU as an underdog. We got a night game. We got Provo. We got Kansas State going on the road, a team that I'm not super high on. I'll just rewind 2 weeks ago. Kansas State probably should have lost to Tulane outright in New Orleans. Avery Johnson, I know they finally let him loose as a runner. Last week against Arizona, he ran for over 100 yards. He still passed for under 200. That's 3 straight games now. I think that Kansas State, I don't trust this offense to go onto the road. Tough place to play in BYU. And honestly, put some respect on BYU's defense, a team that I wasn't super high on going into the year. I mean, I've lost money on them the first 3 weeks of the season, but they haven't faced a super dynamic offense just yet. But they rank top 40 in havoc and 16th in success rate. The defensive line has been super sturdy, ranking 54th in defensive line yards. I just wonder if they're able to put Kansas State in obvious passing situations, 3rd and 7. And let's see if Avery Johnson could do that on the road because he didn't really do it against Tulane. And I don't know if it's going to happen here. So I like BYU. And to me, the way to beat Kansas State is through the air. And what BYU can do with their quarterback, Jake Retzlaff, is chuck it down the field. He already has 11 big-time throws, according to Pro Football Focus. This guy can absolutely sling it with Chase Roberts at wide receiver. I think Kansas State is in big trouble here because we saw against Tulane, Darian Mensah, the young quarterback, chuck it down the field, and that gave Kansas State fits. Average over 10 yards of drop back. I think BYU could do the same here. I like BYU catching points. I think they win this game outright. So give me BYU. And our last pick, Sickos Pick, Cody. I don't know how he's going to trust this Wyoming team to score points, but he's taking the Wyoming North Texas over 55.5. That is sick in the head. For me, I think fairly sick, but I'm going to lay the points with Sam Houston State. -16.5 against New Mexico State. New Mexico State put up a pretty valiant effort against Liberty, but I think that this Liberty team is pretty worse, in my opinion. We saw last week New Mexico State get absolutely whopped by Fresno State. They lost 49-0 to Fresno. Maybe it was 48-0. I don't know. It was a lot to a little, though. The Sam Houston State team, though, is super improved, especially on the offensive end. So I actually do think they can get some margin here. We saw them close as a 4.5-point favorite against Hawaii. They won that game pretty handedly. And what the team can really do is explosive pass. They rank top 5 in the country right now in explosive pass rate. They got this JUCO transfer, Hunter Watson. He loves to chuck the ball down the field. This team, top 40 in EPA per pass. To me, just New Mexico State does not have a viable offense whatsoever. They are averaging 3.5 yards per play. That is bottom 4 in the entire country. They have the second lowest EPA per play rate. I just don't see them holding up. I think Sam Houston State leans on them, and they hit a few explosives, and they run them off the field. So I basically did a solo show, but thank you, Cody. I appreciate the valiant effort. For those of you listening, make sure you use the promo code Stacking the Box when you sign up for Underdog. You get a free cash entry into your pick'em pool and a $1,000 deposit bonus. Again, make sure you're using the code Stacking the Box. To recap the show, me, Reed, I took the under 57.5 in Tennessee, Oklahoma, the under 46.5 in USC, Michigan, Illinois plus 10, Oklahoma State plus 2, BYU plus 7.5 on the money line, and Sam Houston State minus 16.5. Cody, he took Tennessee minus 6.5. He took the road favorite. He also took the road favorite again with USC minus 5.5. He took Illinois first half team total over 7.5, the over 53.5 in Oklahoma State, Utah, Arkansas plus 3. That's on the money line at plus 124 against Auburn. And then he took the over 55.5 with Wyoming, North Texas. There's your show. There's me motoring through it. Thank you all for listening. Shout out to producer Joanne on the back end. Cody, I still appreciate you. I'm going to make up some ground on you this week for sure now after you left me hanging here. But until next week, we will talk some week 5 action. Enjoy week 4. We will talk to you then.